The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on December 6th, 2022.
Welcome to Business Matters radio show with your host, Pam Toompop. Good morning, Pam.
Hey, good morning, Gary. Thank you so much for kicking us off this morning. I hope everybody's having a glorious Tuesday morning. I'm Pamela Toompop, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and this is Business Matters, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. Today we're going to talk about SMA rules and shoreline management, and a little bit about managed retreat. We're going to have David Arakawa on from the Land Use Research Foundation, known as LURF, LURF, and Lisa Paulson, Executive Director of the Maui Hotel and Lodging Association, also talking about what these rules mean to the hotel industry, and then followed by Maui no Kaoi, the new publisher of Maui no Kaoi magazine, Christopher Amundson, is going to be with us. So it's going to be a great morning this morning. But first we're going to speak with the Executive Director of the Land Use Research Foundation, David Arakawa. He is a board member of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. He has been the Executive Director of the Land Use Research Foundation from February 2007, 15 years plus, doing this job for quite some time. He'd previously been manager of Leeward Oahu's Transportation Management Association. Prior to that, he was also a senior vice president, general counsel, and corporate secretary for Hawaiian Airlines. And he worked for the city and county of Honolulu, and also had law offices in the past. So we're thrilled to have David on this morning. Gary, has David joined us? Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what prompted inviting David and Lisa on this morning, and that is that we have been dealing with the shoreline management issue for a number of years now. The planning department has worked very hard to discuss the shoreline management area, to hold informational briefings. And I think over COVID, things got a little lost for some of us in terms of the process. Some people, were in the know and maybe keeping up to speed, but it seems like a small group. And then new rules came out. The proposed new rules came out, and looking at both the SMA area and the shoreline management, what are we doing in SMA and the shoreline management areas? And what we found is the Planning Commission was about to review it, and their review on these rule changes is the final review. It doesn't go back to County Council. As they work on this review, they can make the decisions. And it was coming up, and we were recognizing it was coming up for review. And as we started looking at some of the tools that are online, we started realizing that many people that we're working with didn't seem to know that, one, the Planning Commission was taking it up a couple of weeks ago, and two, had a lot of questions about the tools and the maps. And so we really wanted to encourage the Planning Commission to let people know that this is coming up and is being heard, and engage them in working on this issue and letting the Commission know their thoughts. So Gary's just letting me know he's going to keep trying to reach David, and we will. Let me share a little bit about some of the tools. I'm going to try and pull up some of the key tools to help people understand a little bit about this. So as we were coming up and working on this, basically what happened is we got notified, and we started reaching out to other bigger groups like West Maui Taxpayers Association, Wailea Community Association, and just kind of wanted to make sure everybody knew that it was coming before the Planning Commission, had a chance to look at the proposed rule changes, and, just were they ready to ring in? And we also found in testimony before the Planning Commission that private landowners weren't really clear. So while we didn't have a chance at the last meeting, they had to defer, and that meeting will be coming up again today at 11 a.m. before the Planning Commission. we're going to continue to talk about this. Some landowners say they didn't realize what some of the rules were. We started talking to people about the different maps and if they were aware of the rule changes, if they'd looked at the maps, if they recognized if their property was in the inundation area, and found that many didn't, one, know that things were coming up before the Planning Commission, hadn't seen the rule changes, and many said they weren't notified. And that's kind of an ongoing thing. This is not something that we or anybody should be trying to kick the can down the road. We know that we are seeing big changes in our shoreline and extensive erosion, and some properties are already experiencing challenges more than others, but we know more challenges are coming with sea level rise and environmental changes. So we are now saying, okay, how do we start addressing this, and how do we work on this? And we're not trying to kick the can down the road, but before we start changing the rules, we need to make sure that all affected people in the area, both whether it's a private residence or a business, and of course when you talk about shoreline management, you're talking up and down the coastline. So within some of the tools, they look at who's impacted, and there are different levels of lines that you can look at on the maps and try to understand, okay, is your business or home impacted by these different lines? And they kind of look at 40-foot, they look at whether you're in this proposed shoreline setback. And so they have different elements of the proposed shoreline setback and go through the maps and say, okay, excuse me, I'm getting updates. We're still trying to reach David, so just want to let you know about that. In case you hear a dinging in the background, that's to let me know whether we've gotten David on the line. So we're still trying, and I know Gary will just ring in when he's got David on the phone. But in the meantime, I'll try and take you through this in a way over radio that's a little bit different than if you were sitting at your computer. But there are tools that the planning department has put out and that the University of Hawaii and others helped to create that show these different lines along the shoreline and making projections using these lines about what properties are really going to be impacted over, the next 20, 30 years. And where is it safe to build? And where should we continue to, if we see damage, renovate? But the question is, how long is it that you continue to try and renovate in areas that might continue to degrade? Or when should you be looking to retreat? And then, of course, the next question is, if you're needing to retreat, well, I guess the first question is, with these different changes, what is possible in terms of the property, how can we protect it, what measures can be taken to protect it, what are new things that we can do, or are there new things that we can do? And, you hear about seawalls and different hardening techniques. There's many different techniques. So the question is, how do we come together and look at some of the solutions? And then if we feel like we absolutely need to say, okay, well, this property is going to be have challenges for many different years. So do you keep trying to renovate, or do you continue to say, if we keep investing, it's not helpful. It's going to continue to be problematic because basically the sea level's continuing to rise. There's continuing to be erosion. It's compromising the structures. It's compromising operations. So at what point do you then say, okay, some of these, we're out of different measures. Maybe we need to start retreating back and pulling back. And then where can you pull back to? And in some cases, as you start looking around areas that are built, these are huge issues. I view this issue as so important because this is like the next environmental economic wave that we're going to hit. We've gone through 2 years and continuing to go through COVID pandemic, and we're seeing flus and different variants coming up, and we're still struggling with this. But this is another wave that's coming. It's been coming for a while. Don't mean to use the pun wave, but we are seeing, continued erosion and sea level rise, and so we know that we have to address this. It's something that it can't just keep being pushed down the road, but we also know that there's huge economic impacts and property impacts on this particular issue. And so given that, we also have to understand that we need to really engage the community. We truly need to make sure that the properties who are impacted know that the county is looking at new rules, need to know what those rules are before we enact rules that impact their property, and also look at some of the forecasts that are available as we go through all of this, and test the analysis, test the models, see how we feel about those. And are we happy with some of those models? Do we have questions over the models? And when you first look at it, there are so many different things that you can look at, and then you need to understand some of the assumptions. And so that was something that was really discussed for hours. I have to give the Planning Commission great kudos when they last took this up. Their meeting started at 9 in the morning, and if I recall correctly, I think it ended around 5, and they worked with very short breaks. They did not take a lunch break, and continued to work very hard on this issue and moving it forward and hearing from many testifiers. And the testifiers came out. They had a couple other issues prior to this issue, but they diligently worked through the day to hear everybody. Everybody who was there was heard. It was a long day for them, so they didn't have time for their own discussion and debate and deliberations. But there are so many areas where you can look about this and see what they're doing and learn. And again, today there's an agenda. They're going to be on today again at 11 a.m. So one of the places that you can look is you can go to mauicounty.gov. David's going to be calling in shortly, but you can go to mauicounty.gov, and you're going to learn about the Planning Commission, and you can see there who's on and some of the topical issues that they're taking up. And then you can see that they are taking up under a topic of additional information. They've got Chapter 202, which is the Special Management Area Rules and the Shoreline Rules. And so these are areas where you can take a look and connect with some of the tools that are available and see the new language that is being considered for changes. And key things are being considered for changes, which is, what are some of the mitigation measures? What are some of the things that are going to be allowed to be rebuilt? What is the process for rebuilding? And they're going to go through a lot of different things where if you have a property in that area, whether it's a business property or a personal property, these rules are going to have an impact on you. So it's fascinating to see the different layers of all of the different tools that are available. But you need to understand, as you look at it, as we're looking at coastal erosion and you're going to the different map tools, you're going to, I got David on the line. So let me just finish that one sentence and then I'm going to welcome David on. But as you look at these different lines and the mapping tools, there's different levels of lines, and so the red line is the line that you need to go to, and when we're done, we'll circle back on where you can find that mapping tool. But you need to start with the red line, and then one of our concerns was on top of that layer, they were going to add another 40 feet, and that's not shown. So as you're looking, and if you're in that area from South Maui to West Maui, and trying to understand on the coastal area where your property is, and if you're impacted by these rules, and to what degree are you looking at these concerns, you'll want to start with the red line and know there's another 40 feet. So, David, I'm so glad to have you on. Aloha, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good morning. Good morning, Maui. All right,
Good
Pam.
morning.
Thank you.
Well, first, can you tell everybody briefly what the Land Use Research Foundation does?
Okay, the Land Use Research Foundation was formed in 1979 on Oahu and across the state on all the neighbor islands. And most of the major housing builders, home builders, formed Land Use Research Foundation, and it was primarily back in the 70s. It was to build more housing, for the middle class. And so that's how it started. And of course, the major landowners were the plantations at that time, were the big landowners around the island. And slowly over time, we've added more different types of landowners and developers, commercial, hotel and resort, and even Hawaiian Electric and Hawaii Gas, and a number of renewable energy producers. So it's a comprehensive thing. We do land use planning. We research. We provide input, facts, figures. We get involved in working groups to find better solutions. Across the state.
And you've been ringing in on so many of our important solutions, and through your working groups, you are uniting people together to get at some of the, again, bring in a diversity of leaders to think outside of the box and get to some of the best answers. Can you share, David? You rang in on the SMA and shoreline management rules and the shoreline setbacks. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your thoughts on this and the work before the Planning Commission now?
Yes, it's exciting. It's an exciting time on Maui, or important time, I would say, on Maui. And I was just listening to you right before this, and you are so correct, Pam. This is so important. What the Planning Commission is doing is going to be so important for everyone who lives along the shoreline or has a business or works along the shoreline. And it's important from the standpoint of their private property and what they can use their private property for, but it's also important from the science standpoint, sea level rise, and doing whatever you need to do on your property to stay safe from sea level rise. So it's important in very many ways, and the county is hopefully going to, work with other ocean scientists and landowners to take a closer look on how to implement these rules. We have been involved, Pam. In 2014, we were called in by some of our members to be part of the Kauai County working group that was set up by the Kauai County Council to update their shoreline rules. And they have the most progressive shoreline rules in the state. And we worked with the University of Hawaii Sea Grant Program. We worked with environmental advocates and, landowners. And we were able to come up with, some of the most progressive, and fair shoreline rules on Kauai. And Maui is poised to go one step further with the aid of science, this type of scientific mapping you folks are doing. But like we talked about in the hearing, it was pretty, I would say shocking. I didn't want to use the word shocking, but, interesting, if not shocking. Hearing the testimony of some of the law firms and the ocean scientists, the Maui Planning Department is going on the right path. They're going on the right path. They're doing the right thing. They've been working hard, and Chip Fletcher, has been helping them, and that he's really good. But the model they're using, some of the ocean scientists who helped along with Sea Grant, helped with the Kauai rules, is saying this is a great start. Maui's off to a great start, but the program they're using does not adequately address individual parcels. So the position of many of us is Maui should take the time, maybe a couple months, no more than 3 months, but work together with individual property owners, because one size does not fit all, Pam, and you know that from your experience in business and in everything else. I think one size does not fit all, but we need to have rules that will be flexible enough to address, everyone's interests.
That's so true. And, and that's one of the things, as we were going through this, we were learning about different elements of the models and some of the challenges. And one of our concerns was, as we look at the model, first of all, there's breaks in the model. People are still just trying to understand the model. The model shows certain elements and different levels of setback, and there's different assumptions based on each level. And at one point we heard that the red line was actually, the most aggressive pullback that we could do, but then 40 feet was added beyond that. But also what was interesting was to hear how they're still revamping these models, and that the models were based on more extreme
assumptions.
Different assumptions, and also how well we were doing with our I'm totally drawing a blank on greenhouse gases, I guess, but how we were looking at how we were doing on pollution control and certain things.
Carbon sequestration, the whole bit, right?
Yeah.
And
it was based on the worst case scenario, and in some cases we're doing better than that with greenhouse gases and other things. But we're also recognizing that that's a changing dynamic.
And
so it was one of those things where, as you pointed out, on Kauai, also the model is based on taking looks at certain aerial images, and as you pointed out on Kauai, I think you called it truth finding or truth serving. What was the terminology used for that?
Yeah, ground truthing.
Ground truthing.
Right, and so it was, and this is the shocking part, actually. The shocking part was reading some testimony that confirmed, and I still need to confirm this myself. I need to do my truthing work, but that some of the sea level rise viewing data was taken in 2006 and 2008, right? And so because of that, we need to do ground truth. They need to go back out and get and the shoreline changes based on the seasons and based on different things. And so I think we heard from, who was that woman that testified?
Auntie Mopsy said, if you want to see the changes, come out to my property.
She's the bomb. She's the bomb. And we have these scientists saying, no, absolutely not. We don't have to look at people's property like Auntie Mopsy. And Auntie Mopsy is going, hey, it changes all the. You come out one day, it's going to be different from the next day. So please come out and take a look. No, we don't need to take a look. Hello, right? So that's all we're asking for. Take the time, a month or two, to look at these areas that are different. One size does not fit all. Do some ground truthing to make sure that the sea level rise viewer that they're using is accurate. And let's go from there. Let's create a permitted interaction group or working group like we did on Kauai and come up with something that works for Maui, right? Maui's unique, so we need to come up with something that works for Maui. That's kind of shocking.
And I do want to say that the planning department also indicated that they would be coming up with a second map. But as we were, and that's written into the changes that they're trying to make. But I do want to say that when you're talking about properties, and when you go to this viewer, and I'm going to give you the the URL in just a moment. There's also these different layers that you can apply, and one of the shocking layers is going to be the economic impact layer. And when you add that overlay, you very quickly get a sense, okay, we know we've got huge environmental impacts, but there's an economic layer that shows the economic impact. And then you quickly realize how important it is that we get this right, and that we come up with solutions, and that we understand down to the property level, where are we at, what are our options. We really explore how to get this right and overlay accurate data, because the impacts both on an environmental side and an economic side are huge, really huge. And if you just think about, for example, Front Street in Lahaina, how many businesses are right there by the seawall, right? I mean, we've lined Front Street with businesses, and there isn't a place really. I mean, where how would you retreat them inward? We've infilled up to those areas as well. So let me just tell you where the viewer can be found. You can go to Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer.org. Sounds pretty simple, right? www.hawaiisealevelriseviewer.org. And it's a great way to begin looking at this. But I think the key thing is, and David, are you going to be in there today? I'll be back today.
Yes, I'll try to get in there. What time, 9
the
o'clock?
diehards. Ask Lisa Paulson, who's going to join us next. But take a look at the viewer. And again, as you look at the setback lines, you're going to see multiple choices for the setback lines, but you're going to go to the 3.2, the red line, as an example, and then understand that right now they're looking at adding another 40 feet inward as an area that these rules would apply to. So it is really, as you point out, and there were people who questioned the model. We also had the different people from the team who developed the model and noted that it was peer-reviewed, and that there were, that they, at first they didn't look at it as a model that could be used for this level of determination, but then over time that they felt the model could be used for this, and after it was peer-reviewed and additional assessments were done, but also we then further learned that the basis for this model is still being updated. And, this dynamic is going to constantly change over the years. So how do we, David, as you say, in the next few months, as we're looking at things like the ground truthing, so we're getting down to a deeper property level, getting a better understanding of what the shorelines, as Amundson said, it changes all the time. So where are we kind of currently at, and how do we apply these models, also recognizing that the models are changing at this time. It seems like every year they're doing updates. So how do we find the sweet spot, and how do we keep this into a dynamic planning process so that we're revisiting as we go along, given all of these environmental changes?
Right, and that's the nature of rules, Pam. Rules and laws. Rules can be updated, easier than laws. But so these rules are meant, like you say, to be looked at every so often and adjusted, right? But we need to take the time, like you said, to do it right. It'll only be a month or two, and I don't know if I took it the wrong way, but what I thought I heard was, you know what, this is peer review. This has been peer reviewed by scientists, so we don't need to look at Amundsen's property. We absolutely don't have to go out there and take a look. And I was shocked. I was just going, really? Right? And so let's take the time to do it right, get the experts in the room, get the people who live on the shoreline in the room, take a look at the models and the assumptions, like you say, and have all the people in the room to get an idea, understand what the assumptions are, what the different lines are, and come to some kind of consensus on where they should be drawn, right?
Yeah.
So let's take the time to do it right. People on the mainland are working on this, San Francisco, Florida, all of the major cities along the shoreline. There are businesses, major businesses, and their business district near the shoreline. Everybody's going to be looking at this. So let's take the time to do it right and not say, you know what, we've been working on this for 1 year. We want to do it before the end of December. Let's just do it, right? Maui has a tremendous opportunity to be a leader in this area. So, and the planning department's on the right path. So that's a good thing at Sea Grant.
Yes, and our planning department has worked very hard on this and continues to work on it. There was some discussion, and I was thrilled to hear it, about the suggestion of a working group. I think that is a great idea. To have an overlay, and as you say, to get to some ground truthing and keep this moving forward, but quickly. Again, we're not trying to kick the can down the road, but we're not also going to be out of the woods even with the new rules. This is something that our community is going to have to be actively engaged in. We're talking about something that we're projecting out for decades right now. And so it's really important that people understand, especially if you have a business or property along the shoreline, you want to be looking at these rules. And when you go to the map, you're going to see the different islands statewide. You're going to want to click on Maui. The first thing it talks about on the right-hand side is a box that talks about exposure. You are going to click on the 3.2 line. And so that's the start, but that's not the end-all, be-all. And this model does not account for all areas currently across the whole island. So it pretty much, again, is going into our major destination areas. So we go from Paia all around through Kapalua, Napili, Kaanapali, all the way down Lahaina to Ma'alaya, Kihei, and to Wailea, Makena. While the economic model starts mapping out areas like Ke'anai, Hana, and Kaupo, the shoreline map does not, the erosion control map does not go all the way across the island in the model that's being shared. So take a look. This is really important. David, I will see you at the Planning Commission then via Zoom.
Very good. And thank you for what you're doing. Educating the public is so important. This is a very important issue, and many of us were busy doing other things during the pandemic, and many of us missed this. And, even Auntie Mopsy said, hey, I didn't even know this was going on. So we're not talking about, like you say, kicking the can down the road. Let's put a 3-month limit on this and say by February or March at the latest, let's pass something, right? And let's all work together. So thank you very much for educating me and the public, Pam. You're doing a great service.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for educating me and the public. You do a great service, too, and we appreciate you and Murph being involved in this and so many other initiatives that you continue to ring in on to help bringing expertise and additional information, and you sharing your experience of how Kauai did it was, I think, very helpful. It was very important and interesting to me, and I'm sure the Planning Commission greatly appreciated that as well, as did the other testifiers who got to listen in. So we'll take it up again, and thank you, David, for all you do. We certainly appreciate your work, and I'll see you soon on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. Take care,
Thank
Pam.
you.
Thank
Aloha.
You. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye. We're going to take a quick commercial break from Mokulele Airlines, and then we'll have Lisa Paulson in to talk a little further about what this means to our hotel and lodging industry.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
Welcome back to Business Matters.
I'm here. Thank you, Gary. Do we have Lisa on the line?
I see somebody calling in right now. Hang on, let me check.
Okay, great. Well, while Gary's answering the phone, I just want to mention that Lisa Paulson is with the Maui Hotel and Lodging Association. Of course, we've known her for many years. She was at the Hotel and Lodging Association for a while, then left and came back, but she's a senior executive with 25 years of experience driving strategic growth and visibility for businesses and nonprofit organizations, and is very involved in our community. Is Lisa on?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Lisa, good morning, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. David was able to join us this morning, and we were just talking about the Planning Commission meeting at 11. I'm sure you're going to be on again today.
I hope so. I have a board meeting this morning, so I'm trying to fit it all in.
Well, we're talking shoreline setbacks and some of the new rules. I just wanted to, you shared at the Planning Commission meeting really important perspectives from the visitor industry standpoint. Could you share those with us this morning?
Well, absolutely. First of all, we're in agreement that any kind of planning rules are needed, and just looking, historically, we haven't done such a great job, so we do appreciate the planning department's efforts. However, at this time, we're asking for a deferral in favor of a small working group, just so that we can have more people at the table to discuss some of the issues with the rules as they're moving forward. We have proposed a change to the rules as well as the working group, and I'm happy to discuss that if you want me to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that and why you're proposing that change, because I know it's very important.
Yeah. So, specifically before I go into the rule change, if a corner of a building falls within the new red line, that's going to be on this map, that would make the entire building non-conforming, or at least a portion of it. And
right.
For us, we have to abide by not only county, state, but also federal rules. So if there's a new ruling for ADA compliance or, even fire sprinkler suppression systems,
right,
we wouldn't be able to do it because the building would be non-conforming, and then thus, that whole building becomes just, it would be vacant. So we're proposing that they, get rid of, they delete the limitation on $500,000 in a 24-month period, and basically just, deleting 5 and making it into, I don't want to go into all the jargon, but making it into one rule where we would be able to do those improvements on buildings that might fall within that setback.
Absolutely. And we also talked about, when it comes to large property and hotel renovations, $500,000 in 24 months is nothing. I mean, that can be a drop in the bucket on the scale of a hotel property. So that was really an important rule change for our hotel industry.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you brought that forward. And, of course, the hotels, all of our hotels are looking at this. This is a major impact, and you folks have been working on this for, we all need to do more, but you've been working on, looking at the beach erosion and sand replenishment, and the industry has been involved in working on plans, as some of the testifiers shared, that they're working on plans and different modeling. Can you talk a little bit about what's underway within the industry and some of the things that they've been doing and what they're looking forward and continuing to work on?
Absolutely. And if I could just digress for just a second, the properties that are already, very close to the shoreline and were built many years too close, we're in agreement with what needs to happen. But for these structures that are so set back from the ocean, and I mean, we're talking maybe in 50 years,
right.
there'll be a problem. We're always trying to be sustainable and ecological in everything that we do because it benefits us. And so, when we talk about lawn irrigation, we're hooking up to satellites so that the lawn sprinklers don't go off if there's rain on the way or if it's raining. I apologize. I'm in my car.
That's okay.
And then, and we're always looking at ways to be more friendly to the environment. So, we're working with the county and trying to get R1, and that's the gray water, so that we can use that for irrigation for our properties. So we're always forward-looking. It takes all of us together to come to, some legislative cohesiveness is the word I'm looking for. And I'm just appreciative that the Planning Commission will listen to us, hopefully, and allow us this working group.
Yeah, and I was glad that they brought that up. I'm really hoping, though, that when we look at a working group, that we also, it sounded like they were naming a few very small groups, but we were finding, as we were reaching out to educate people about this is coming up before the Planning Commission, for example, West Maui Taxpayers Association was not aware and of the current updates and what was being taken up that day before the Planning Commission. And then we heard from Auntie Mopsy, and we realized, we really need some people representing, personal, private properties that to have that voice represented, and the voice of the businesses and all the businesses across the shoreline that are impacted, in addition to the hotel properties and different regions. And I know Kaina Shiki mentioned, also she could represent different groups. So kind of looking at how do we come up with leverage, not again have a small working group so that we can get it done in the right time frame, but also I feel do some of the things that David Arakawa, who was on earlier, mentioned as well, like Kauai did, the ground truthing, really understanding a sense at the property level and what kind of things can be done so that we could get some real work done and modify some of these rules in a short period of time. He was talking about, maybe 3 to 4 months. So we're not continuing to move it down the road, but we're getting better representation for those who are going to be impacted in a working group and participating. What do you feel is the sense of that? It seemed like there was, from the Planning Commission, some interest in that.
Yeah, I do. And, I think because I participated in so many stakeholder groups, I do think we need to be sure we keep it small and make sure that the communication is broader. As you know, when we have 50 people in the room, it's going to take longer to come to some really well-drafted thoughts. So I think that's where they were being cautionary in adding too many people to the working group, just for keeping it, being able to come up with really solid talking points in 3 months. So, I'm so in favor for the working group, and I really, really hope at today's meeting today, the Planning Commission is supportive of that suggestion.
I hope so too, and I'll be curious to hear their deliberations today. We're reminding everybody it is at 11 a.m. and you can find the agenda on the Planning Commission website. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. I didn't know you had a board meeting, so I'm sure you're running to get ready for that, as well as everything else going on in your day. But really appreciate all the amazing work you do. Thank you for proposing some great amendments to the rules and for supporting a working group. And I agree. I don't think we're talking about 50 people, but I think we could probably get to 9 and have a little better representation. Or 7 even, but that kind of needs to be ferreted out. But a small group that can really represent the different people, from private property owners to the large hotels and businesses and areas that are going to see significant change, and get some great advice and people geared up. Because once the rules are done, also this is continuing work. And as David said, that legislation is meant to be changed. but sometimes it sits for quite a while. So we want to make sure that we're on this. This is a huge impact to our community over time, and shorelines changes happen. As Auntie Mopsy said, it's different each day. So come on out and take a look. And
absolutely.
That's important to remember. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, and I just think when we look at legislation in the future, Pam, and I think you will probably agree with this, it needs to come not just from the government and the science side of things, but bring people to the table, because when we brought up our federal compliance issues,
right,
that wasn't even something they had thought of.
That's right, and that's why you need the industry and business voices to explain. There are so many elements that if you're not in business, you don't understand, and those have huge insurance ramifications, or inability to get insurance.
Exactly.
And again, like you say, the crossover of county, state, and federal laws. So non-conforming, and we've just recently done this again when we were talking about, protecting the ability to renovate properties and with the hotel moratorium. We have to make sure, saying something like we're going to grandfather someone, a business or property as non-conforming has many challenges that come with it, and that we need to continue to educate elected officials on. That doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah,
that is not helpful on many different levels. So we want to decide what can be allowed and how we allow it, so that we're not grandfathering in non-conforming, but we're clear on what the plan is, what we want to accept, and how we can go about protecting things. So thank you, Lisa, for your time. Greatly appreciate all your efforts, and have a great board meeting, and a beautiful Maui day.
You as well. Thank you for including me today, Pam.
Thank you. Aloha. All right. Well, we're going to have Christopher call in. Christopher is with Flagship Publishing and Maui no Kauai magazine. He is one of the new, not one of, but it is a husband and wife team, and he is a new owner of Maui no Kauai magazine. We know this magazine because it's been a cherished publication in our community for I don't know how many decades, as long as I can possibly remember. And we're so pleased that Christopher is now taking this on and continuing the great legacy with a cherished magazine that we love that benefits so many in our community. And I'm just going to check in with Gary to see if Christopher has called in. Chris is on. All right. Well, Christopher Amundson, welcome. We're with Flagship Publishing and now Maui no Kauai. Tell us a little bit about you and your family, and why you've bought Maui no Kauai magazine.
Aloha, Pam. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Gary, for making the connection as well. So, this is Chris Amundson. My wife and I. My wife is Angela Amundson, and we recently purchased Maui no Kauai magazine from Diane Woodburn. I would say that we are the next generation of caretakers of the magazine. We've been faithful readers of the magazine for 10 years, and we fell in love with Maui when we came here our first time 10 years ago. Like so many other people who have come to Maui who weren't privileged to have been born here, but luckily found it at some point in their lives. We were just smitten with Maui, and we think it's a beautiful place to be cherished and cared for. And so we met Diane 10 years ago on her first trip, and at that time we talked to her about possibly purchasing her magazine someday, taking it over when she was ready to retire. And so that time has come. Yeah.
Well, that is fantastic, and we are so thrilled to have you here. And I know you have been getting out in the community, networking, getting to connect with people who have been part of the magazine and new businesses who could be part of the magazine. tell everybody a little bit about what you see as the direction for the magazine and any new things coming up.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. As I mentioned, we've been coming here for a while, and we publish. We're originally from Nebraska. We're from a small town in Nebraska originally, born and raised. Angela and me, and we got married just right out of high school many years ago, and I was able as a young person to go to work at a magazine, and then eventually buy that magazine and grow that magazine. And the work that we like to do with magazines is we see magazines as something that can not only promote and not only educate, but it's something that can really connect people with different interests, and get them to kind of think the same good thoughts about a place at the same time. And so what we were able to do with Nebraska Life is our magazine there, and then we started a couple other magazines in Colorado and Utah, similar magazines to Maui no Kauai in those states. And one of the things that we've done is try to really build this connection of a lot of subscribers to the magazine. So with Maui no Kauai magazine, we plan to do much the same as Diane has done through the years, and thoughtful, beautiful stories about the land and the history and the culture, stories about travel, stories about artists and businesses, and the people who make this place what it is, who make the place special. So we'll try to continue that tradition that Diane has started. And then we think Maui no Kauai is just a wonderful magazine. It's true, it's beautiful, it's heartfelt, it's a real magazine of real life. And so we want to take that message and continue to grow that through subscription marketing efforts, and both on
Pam.
island.
Pam, I hate to interrupt, but we have only less than a minute left.
Okay, so Chris,
Thank you.
I'm going to have you give everybody your contact information and let them know how they can reach out to you. Real quick, we've got about 10 seconds.
808-242-8331. That's 808-242-8331.
Okay, well, we're going to bring you on again. I know we ran late on our other issue as we were connecting with David, but that's all the time we have. It goes quick at Business Matters. I just want to wish everybody blessings and aloha for a beautiful Maui day.
Aloha.
And mahalo, Christopher, for joining us.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.